Okay, what if everything you think you know about the age of the universe is just wrong? And I don't mean off by a little bit, I mean off by billions and billions of years. Today, we're diving into a source that makes that exact, incredible claim. So let's just put it all on the table. On one hand, you have the standard model, the one we all learned in school. The universe is about 13.8 billion years old. But on the other hand, this source proposes a universe that's just 5,786 years old. And it calls that number a forensic legal constant. We're definitely going to unpack what that means. And right out of the gate, the author makes this incredibly bold claim. They're saying the 13.8 billion year figure isn't some hard scientific fact we discovered. No, they call it a theological coup, basically a philosophical choice that we've all just accepted as science. So how on earth do you even begin to support a claim that radical? Well, it all starts with what the author calls a forensic audit of the standard model. They're basically putting our entire understanding of deep time under a microscope. The paper starts by drawing a really sharp line between two different kinds of science. First, you've got operational science. That's the stuff you can repeat in a lab, right? Mix chemical A with chemical B, you get result C every time. But then there's historical science. And that, the author argues, is more like being a detective at a crime scene that's millions of years old. You're just working with the clues left behind, and that means you have to make assumptions. Now, this is where it gets a little mathematical, but stick with me. The paper argues that trying to figure out the universe's past is an ill-posed inverse problem. All that really means is that there isn't enough information in the present to be 100% sure about the one single path that got us here. It's kind of like you find a puddle of water. Did it rain? Did a sprinkler go off? Did someone spill a bucket? Any of those could be true. You can't know for sure just by looking at the puddle. And this slide is the perfect way to visualize that. If I just tell you the answer is 2, you have no way of knowing for sure what the original question was. Was it 1 plus 1, 4 minus 2? The paper's point is that cosmology is in the exact same situation. We see the answer, the universe today, but we can't be certain about the question that created it. This is such a great analogy. The paper says that using things like radioactive dating to calculate the universe's age is like walking into a random house, measuring the temperature of some water simmering on the stove, and then confidently declaring you've calculated the age of the entire building. You're completely ignoring the architect, the blueprints, the construction, the whole history. Next, the audit takes aim at the very stuff the cosmos is made of. It points out that, according to the standard model, a whopping 95% of our universe is dark matter and dark energy. Stuff we can't see, touch, or detect directly. The author gives them a pretty provocative name: secular ghosts. And the author does not pull any punches here. They argue that this 95% isn't some profound scientific mystery. They call it a metaphysical Ponzi scheme, basically a massive fudge factor that's just there to make the math work and keep the whole theory from collapsing. I mean, wow. The paper also has a problem with the whole science will figure it out one day attitude. The author calls this promissory materialism. It's basically like writing a check today based on a job you hope you're going to get next year. The paper argues that it's not science, it's an act of faith in a theory that doesn't even exist yet. Okay, so after systematically trying to tear down the 13.8 billion year model, what does the paper actually propose to replace it? Let's get into their alternative. And here it is, 5,786. Now, this number doesn't come from a telescope or a particle accelerator. It comes from what the source calls a forensic legal constant, based on a continuous, unbroken historical record. So what's the big deal with this number? Well, according to the paper, its authority comes from a chain of custody, almost like legal evidence. It's been passed down and crucially verified every single day for thousands of years in legal contracts. Think about it. If you got the date wrong on one of those documents, the contract would be totally invalid. That's a pretty serious reason to keep the calendar straight. The paper says this whole timeline is anchored to one specific massive event, what it calls a thermoacoustic singularity at Mount Sinai. The core argument here is that an entire nation of people can't just invent a collective memory of mass death and revival. The source claims it's a trauma so profound, it's basically unforgettable, impossible to fabricate. All right, I know what you're thinking. A 5,786-year-old universe is a radical idea. But what about all the physical evidence? What about the rock layers? What about all the fossils? How could any of that fit into such a short timeline? And yeah, that leads us to the biggest question of all, doesn't it? The T-Rex in the room. What about the dinosaurs? The paper dives right into this. So get ready for this, because the paper's answer is pretty wild. It suggests that dinosaurs weren't part of some long evolutionary chain at all. Instead, they were the products of what it calls biological anarchy, forbidden genetic mixing across species, a concept known as cheleum, that happened in a chaotic world before a global flood. From this perspective, the fossil record isn't a beautiful history of life. No, it's the recycle bin of history. The dinosaurs and other strange creatures were glitches, corrupted files that needed to be deleted from the system. And Noah's Ark? The paper frames it as a biodigital cleanroom, designed to preserve the original, uncorrupted source code of life. But hold on. There's a huge, glaring physics problem here. If you cram billions of years worth of radioactive decay into just a few thousand years, you'd release an unimaginable amount of heat, like enough to melt the entire crust of the Earth. The paper acknowledges this head-on. So how does it solve it? Well, it offers a few theoretical possibilities, what it calls existence proofs. It's not saying this is exactly what happened, but more like, here's how it could have happened. Maybe all that energy was used up in massive geological upheavals, like forming mountains. Or maybe it was safely carried away by neutrinos, those ghost-like particles that barely interact with anything. The point is, the paper argues there are potential pathways within physics to deal with the heat. So in the end, the paper brings it all together by arguing this isn't really a debate about rocks and fossils and data. It's a choice between two completely different, competing worldviews. And here they are, side by side. You have the standard model, a universe born from a stochastic miracle, a random event that somehow stumbled its way from chaos into incredible complexity. And then you have what the paper calls the initialization model, an architectural miracle that began with complexity, with a grand design right from the start. And this is maybe the paper's most powerful point. It argues that both models ultimately rely on a miracle at the beginning, an event that science can't explain. So the real choice isn't if you believe in a miracle, but where you place it. Do you place it in the initial singularity of the Big Bang, or in an initial act of architectural creation? And all of this leaves us with one final, absolutely mind-bending question. Is time an objective thing that we measure, like the temperature of a room? Or is it a coordinate system that we choose to use, like the grid lines on a map? This paper doesn't claim to have the final answer, but it sure forces you to ask the question. And maybe that's the whole point.